This is Popular Front, a podcast focused on the niche details of modern warfare and underreported conflict with me, Jake Hanrahan. Today we're speaking to journalist Roman Lehberger. He's talking to us about a man who was a member of the cell that hijacked the planes and flew them into the Twin Towers on 9/11. He wasn't a hijacker, of course, but he assisted them. He got 15 years in prison in Germany. He's now free, was deported to Morocco. But now this fella is saying, look, it wasn't me. I want you to take me off the terrorist list because it's making life difficult. I can't travel. My bank account is all messed up. Meanwhile, he's still considered a hero amongst jihadist communities across the world. And actually, it's looking quite possible that he will be taken off of this terrorist list and allowed to travel across the world again. Please support us at patreon.com/popularfront. We're going to be talking about this guy. He was involved directly with 9/11 and now wants to be absolved of being a quote-unquote terrorist. I didn't know anything about this story. I was very young when 9/11 happened. I was like 13. It's the first major event I remember like really following on the news. Tell us about this guy. What's going on? What's he up to? Maybe give us a bit of a backstory.
Well, Munir al-Motassadegh, he's a very well-known jihadist, Al-Qaeda operative, and actually a member, as you said, of the Hamburg terror cell who basically planned and conducted the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And I've been following this guy for many years. I cover a lot of jihadism and Islamic terrorism, and so yeah, we've, of course, being from Hamburg, he used to be located in Hamburg. It's a big topic for us, has always been, and one of my sources in the security community gave me a tip that there's some developments regarding this guy, and he just fell off the map for me for quite a while because he spent a long time in prison here in Germany and was deported to Morocco in 2018 and hasn't been heard of since. And now apparently he's really trying to basically be absolved of what he did, and he started quite a serious investigation and serious proceedings at the UN Security Council, or a committee belonging to the UN Security Council, which as a result would basically have him be taken off the international Al-Qaeda terrorist list, which of course would come with a lot of benefits for him. He's on this list, has been for a long time now, and of course, being one of the most well-known Al-Qaeda operatives around the world, many people believe he should be on there. Assets are frozen. There's a big international travel ban, other restrictions that apply to him, and of course, it makes life difficult for him. I'm sure that's the whole purpose of being on such a list. And apparently, he's fighting very hard now to be taken off this list to kind of lead a more normal life, I guess.
Right, and tell us about the Hamburg cell that was involved in the 9/11 hijacking. A lot of our listeners are quite young and are probably not fully versed on that side of it. Me included, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, when 9/11 happened, I was a teenager myself. I was around like 16 or something. But of course, it was a huge event around the world. But what really struck me as a German was the fact that it's all been planned from Germany. The Hamburg cell, the core cell of these conspirators was based in Hamburg. They were students in Hamburg, in the northern part of Germany, for many years, and they secretly created this terrorist group. They went to radical mosques here in Hamburg, and connected with international Al-Qaeda networks, went to Afghanistan to terror camps and everything, and basically plotted this whole thing. And the head of this Hamburg terrorist 9/11 cell was a guy named Mohammed Ada. He's considered basically the core operative of this cell. I don't want to say mastermind, because there were other people, leading up to Osama bin Laden, who basically came up with the idea. But he was the leader of the core cell who actually conducted these plots. And Munir al-Motassadegh, the guy we're talking about now, he was one of his closest friends in Hamburg, and of other people involved with the cell. He frequently went to their apartment in a suburb of Hamburg and hung out. And he also was a jihadist and followed the same ideology. And in the end, prosecutors and the judges, they were convinced that he was not only a friend of the 9/11 guys, but also a close contact and supporter. And what he was sentenced for eventually after the attacks was aiding and abetting murder in hundreds of cases, because what he did basically, beside just being on the same page ideologically, he also supported them in a way that he paid their rent, covered their tuition fees, while the main guys were in Afghanistan training, and also when they were in the US, going to flight schools and everything. So he basically covered their tracks, and therefore aided the guys. That was the main thing. He also went to Afghanistan himself. About a year before the attacks, he went to Afghanistan, and he admitted to participating in military training down there in an Al Qaeda camp. He said, all for religious purposes, of course, and had nothing to do with terrorism. And but the judges didn't believe him, and eventually, after a long back and forth, there were years of court battles after 9/11 in 2001. Until in 2007, he was finally convicted by a higher court here in Germany to many years in prison. I think the sentence was like 15 years, which is the maximum sentence here for these kind of crimes in Germany. And then right before the sentence ended, he was deported to Morocco in 2018, and so it caused quite a stir here in the security community in Germany, because everybody was like, what the hell? I mean, how can this happen, and how can this even be considered? But it's a secret proceeding at the UN. They take this very seriously, and they go to extreme lengths to kind of gather information on the guy, and then after a months-long process, they will come to a result. And we're very curious how this will turn out. And I'm sure if he will actually be taken, should he be taken off the terrorist list, I think a lot of victims' families, of course, will be very outraged.
What I got from reading your article on it was that, I mean, basically what you've just said, this wasn't even an affiliate. He seemed to be straight up a member of this cell, like the 9/11 hijacker cell. He went to the training camp. He was a militant, right? Like, he was very heavily involved. I don't think that's even up for debate.
Well, he would disagree. He said.
Well, he would, yeah.
He maintained his innocence all the way to the end. But he said he was just a close friend. He knew nothing about the plots of his friends and everything, but they did, as you can imagine, extensive investigations, and authorities finally came to the conclusion that, well, he wasn't just a friend. He actually did this on purpose to cover their tracks. He wasn't at the terror camps in Afghanistan when the 9/11 guys were there. I think he went during a different time, maybe even a bit before the other guys went. But he, as I said, he paid their tuition, he paid their rent, took care of business while they were away. And I also believe, of course, it's very likely that he was involved in this. They couldn't really prove that he knew about the actual plan to attack World Trade Center, Pentagon, etc. But what he was sentenced for, at least, was the killing of the passengers on the plane. So they suspect, they proved basically that he was aware of the general plot of kidnapping airplanes. So he was sentenced for the murder of, I think, roughly 250 people, which is the equivalent of passengers on these planes, but not the 3,000 or so people who died in the overall attacks.
Right, and how did they prove that he knew that a plane was going to be hijacked but not flown into the towers?
Well, there were, of course, witnesses. There was circumstantial evidence. It wasn't like the smoking gun, but I think just the circumstantial evidence overall just pointed to the fact that he must have known. There was no way that he wouldn't know about this. And the fact that he went to these training camps, the fact that he also followed the same jihadist ideology, they talked about, the Jews in America and about hating them, and that someone needs to do something about it. And someone who was this close to the cell, it's just highly unlikely that he wasn't aware of anything they were doing when his best friends just disappear all of a sudden. I mean, just imagine if your best buddies just disappear, and it's kind of what do you think they told him? I mean, I think it's natural for him to say that he was innocent, that he's that he's not a militant. But if you go to an Al Qaeda training camp in Afghanistan and actually are trained on weapons and everything and admit to it, it's kind of hard to claim that you're not a militant.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been very clear since 9/11 that the US, Europe basically went, right, let's get everybody even remotely affiliated. And they did jail a lot of people that probably were innocent, or at least they weren't guilty of the crimes that they were jailed for. Yeah. But this guy, I just want to be clear, this guy, you know, after reading your work on it, it's very clear, like you just said, I mean, come on. You know, it's one of them ones. It's like, come on. So he was involved. What about the guys that actually were in Hamburg? How many? They were originally from Saudi, right?
Yeah, most of them were from Saudi Arabia. They were studying here at a technical college here in Hamburg. I'm not sure what the appropriate term is. It's not like regular university, but I guess University of Applied Science. That's probably the right word for it. And so they were all, students here, and kind of worked under the radar. I mean, the professors at the time and fellow students, they all thought they were rather nice guys, very polite, very friendly, not very loud or anything, and they just managed secretly to conspire and form this group. They went to a very famous radical mosque here in Hamburg. It's been closed down for years now, Al-Quds Mosque, near the main train station here. And that was kind of like the breeding ground for Muhammad Atta and all these people who, later on became these terrorists who killed thousands of people. And it was a big embarrassment, of course, for German security authorities, as you can imagine. The CIA and all the other agencies, they just pounded down here in Hamburg. They came down on police and security services here with a lot of force, and penetrated whatever was left of the networks here, and of course went overboard as well. I mean, I don't have to talk to you about or tell you about Guantanamo and all the horrible things that happened, but as you mentioned, El-Motasadiq, I think there's really no doubt that he was part of the core team, and there's really no excuse for that.
No, of course. And he does his jail time, and he now wants to be taken off the terror list. What evidence has he produced other than just going, no, I wasn't?
Well, I think actually I have to read up on the old files. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he also had witnesses. Even one of the guys who's still missing, part of the core team. He might be the only terrorist still on the run, if he's still alive. He wrote, this other guy who's still on the run. He wrote a letter to his family at one point, exonerating his friend Al-Motasadiq of any connection, that he wasn't aware what they were planning and stuff. So, it was basically witnesses who testified to his character, and his family, of course, who maintained that he wasn't a violent guy. And actually, during his time here in prison in Hamburg, he was like a model prisoner. He wasn't violent. He didn't really, he was just very nice and friendly with the guards and everything. However, and that's why a lot of authority people here in Germany, they still think he should be on the terrorist list. He was welcoming fellow jihadists up right until the end, until he was deported in prison. So he's still a hero here in the jihadist scene, and he didn't distance himself at all from people connected to this ideology. He welcomed them as visitors, and he's highly regarded here in these circles, kind of like a martyr, And so that's what the police and other agencies, were basically stressing during this whole thing. That, well, look, he might have a tough life because he's sanctioned, but it's not like he apologized for anything. It's not like he distanced himself from the ideology. So that's why they think he should remain on the list.
Right. So he's kind of like a kind of open hero in the jihadi community in Germany.
Yeah, among I mean, Al Qaeda, it's kind of like yesterday's news, sort of. Not really, because they're on the rise again in Afghanistan, obviously, but still, compared to ISIS, after Al Qaeda, ISIS came and sort of took over the publicity and everything. But even amongst ISIS sympathizers, he's still regarded as the real deal. Like, he actually, followed through, and he's just it's very, very, cynic to call him that, but he really is like a pop star among young jihadists. He's this older guy who went, spent a lot of years in prison, and he paid the price for his convictions, and that's how they portray it. So just the mere fact that he never distanced himself from the ideology, authorities say, it makes him basically kind of like a recruiter still, because he's still something to aspire to for these young kids. He's still a hero of sorts, and yeah, so that's why they think he should stay on the list.
Yeah, I mean, that totally makes sense. Okay, ISIS came along and did all their Mexican cartel-esque murders, but this is the most effective, biggest jihadist like terror attack ever.
Yeah.
This guy's he's like Mike Tyson of jihad. You know what I mean? I can see that legacy is just going to keep going, keep going. He's not distanced himself from that. So then his argument is still then he's just saying, look, it wasn't me. Some people say I'm not violent. I'm a nice guy. That doesn't seem very firm to me. What are the authorities saying?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they're saying. Like, he's just saying this for obvious reasons, but deep down, he's still convicted, or he's still convinced that this is the right path to follow, because they were his close friends for a reason. They all shared the same goal, the same ideology, the same worldview, and basically didn't discriminate didn't discriminate when it came to committing terrorist attacks. I mean, they killed 3,000 people, and I mean that's just saying something in itself. So just the symbolism of even considering taking him off the international terrorist list is a slap in the face for a lot of police officers, and of course for a lot of victims' families. Who just think that this is an outrageous procedure. But it's the UN Security Council. They do this frequently, and so far I think they've processed, they've dealt with about 100 cases so far. 70% have been granted, so to be taken off the list. So his odds aren't that bad after all. And they do this all the time, but it's very rare that a high profile guy like him is actually being considered. A lot of guys, like, let's say, if he was still alive, al-Baghdadi, the ISIS leader, if he was still alive, he would never fight his case, with the UN Security Council. So you have to have some kind of like history of, I don't know, having spent time in prison and not being really active in the community anymore. Otherwise, they wouldn't even consider your request. For him, he served his sentence. He moved to Morocco. So from his point of view, it's like, look, guys, I'm not dangerous anymore, and just get me off the fucking list because it's a nuisance being sanctioned internationally. And he probably wants to travel a bit,
I bet he does. Some conferences ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not sure if his end game might be to maybe come back to Hamburg. I'm not sure if that's what he has in mind. It won't be easy because there's an entry ban, which is completely independent of the terrorist list. So legally, he would only be allowed back into Germany, I think, in the year 2064, when he's like a very old man, should he still be alive. So it's there's very tough hurdles in his way to make it back to Germany. But even, I mean, he lives in Morocco. He comes from a pretty well off background. His family is pretty well off in Morocco. He lives in a good neighborhood there. But yeah, I'm sure he just wants to travel around a bit. And even then, I mean, you can see the concern of the authorities. Should he be allowed to travel to different countries? And I don't know, become an imam at mosque,
right, and do like fucking 9/12, like,
yeah, or speeches to teenagers
yeah.
and everything, anything that could incite them. And of course, they want to do everything in their power to prevent this. So I'm very curious how these proceedings will end. A lot of nations and people have a say in this, and but it could be more than a year until anything will be decided. But the mere fact that they're taking this seriously, that the committee is traveling around the world. There's one a former Chief Justice of Malaysia. He's sort of like the ombudsperson, the main investigators for this committee. He's traveling around the world right now to all the relevant countries, talking to authorities, talking to himself also. That's on their list, so they want to speak to him himself, hear from him what he has to say. And then this person will write a report, present it to the committee, and then the committee will decide of what to do. But as I said, the odds aren't too bad. 70% of all cases so far in the last couple of years have been approved.
Yeah, and I mean, when you say it like that, as cynical as I am about this, just thinking, well, yeah, obviously no, he clearly was involved, and he said he didn't do it, but he's shown no remorse for what happened or whatever. Technically, he served his time, whether he still has the ideology or not. I guess technically it's like, well, he served his time. He should be kind of free to some level, but then obviously it doesn't mean that he's not still a militant or whatever. I guess it is quite a tricky situation, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you can understand him, that's probably exactly what he's telling them. I served my time and everything, and now get me off the list. But this is not a court proceeding. This is not a criminal proceeding at all. He is a free man. I mean, a lot of people are dead because of people like him, and he lives comfortably in Morocco, and he might not be able to travel, but he got off pretty lenient, I think, in the international context.
15 years ain't shit considering.
Yeah, exactly. That's the maximum sentence here in Germany. I mean, if he had he been convicted in the States, he wouldn't get out of prison at all, or maybe be sentenced to death or something. So he was a young guy when he went to prison. He's still a rather young guy now. So he has some years left, and thousands of other people haven't.
What have the families, the 9/11 victims, said about this?
I haven't spoken to them yet. I'm not sure if this story actually has been noticed in the States. I'm not sure we've published it in English, but of course our audience is 99% German. So I haven't heard from any organization representing the families, but I'm sure should they hear about this, I'm sure that they will be strongly against this and petition the UN Security Committee, Sanctions Committee, to not grant him this. But it's heavy symbolism. It's just, imagine, it's also for him. This listing has very real consequences, being sanctioned and stuff. But it's also a strong symbol. He's, I think, only one of two guys worldwide who've ever been sentenced for 9/11 so far. And for this guy to be taken off an international terrorist list, that's quite strange, especially if you've not come out and said, look, I'm very sorry to what happened, and I renounce the ideology, and preach nonviolence and everything, and my friends, they were on the wrong path. He didn't do any of that. So had he done that, I mean, he would probably have morally, a better, stronger case, but he hasn't done that at all. He hasn't backtracked from his ideology. So a lot of people are having a hard time understanding why he's even being considered.
Interesting. And what kind of restrictions does he actually have? Like you said, sounds like he's a bit of a rich kid. He's living nice. He's back in Morocco. He did 15 years for assisting in the deaths of thousands of people. What restrictions does he have on his life right now?
I think the most serious one is the travel ban. He is not allowed to travel officially from one country to the other. All member states of the United Nations, which is pretty much every country on the planet, is not supposed to let him in. So I'm not sure if he managed to, I don't know, slip over to a neighboring country or something. But officially, he shouldn't be able to leave Morocco. Second of all, he would have a hard time creating even a bank account. Any kind of business dealings with him are internationally prohibited, sanctioned. So there's always ways to, work around, as we see with, Russia today too. I mean, a lot of individuals are sanctioned because of the war in Ukraine, and they still manage to get their money. And I'm sure it's the same way with him. He will have some source of funding, but officially it's forbidden. He can't have a bank account. He can't do business. He can't receive money from anyone. Actually, a very embarrassing mistake happened when he was released from prison, or when he was deported from prison here in Germany in 2018. Every prisoner has sort of like an account where they can save up some money. They make a little bit of money every month. And when he was deported, right before they put him on the plane, he had about 7,000 euros, 7,200 euros on that account. And the prison guards, they kind of like, handed him a bundle of cash before they put him on the plane, violating the actual sanctions. So there was an investigation against the guards for basically financing terrorists. which ended in reprimands and also I think like a fine for one of the guards. But that was a very embarrassing mistake for German authorities, that they actually gave him thousands of euros in cash before deporting him.
Yeah, German authorities seem to do a lot of mistakes like this. It doesn't look good for them. All right, mate. Well, about 70% of our audience is in America or is American. So I think this will definitely be of interest to them, of course. If people want to get in touch with you and talk to you about this, or I don't know, maybe some of the victims of the families might hear this and want to get in touch, where can they do that?
Well, I'm on Twitter. They can find me on Twitter. It's Roman.Lehberger. You'll find me easily, and I'm a journalist for Spiegel, and if you just Google me, a lot of contact info will appear, so it shouldn't really be a problem, and they can always go through you too.
Spell your surname for us for anybody that will want to look that up.
Oh, it's Lehberger, Roman Lehberger.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you very much, Jake. Talk to you later.
That was Roman Lehberger talking to us about the 9/11 attacker, who now says, no, it wasn't me. Let me off the terrorist list, please, so I can have an easier life. Check out Roman's work at Der Spiegel. He's doing really great stuff. Not enough of it. Der Spiegel is translated into English, but they got some really, really good stuff going on there. If you want to support Popular Front, you can do so at patreon.com/Popular Front. There are bonus episodes, discount codes for merchandise, narrated articles. There is a whole new separate podcast related to Popular Front, of course, coming there soon, which will be Patreon only. There's extra video content, all sorts of stuff there. Patreon.com/Popular Front, or alternatively, you can support us by buying our merchandise. Look cool as you do it. popularfront.shop. You will see there the pre-orders now for our new magazine. This is not the zine. This is a much more professional A1 magazine. This will be coming out in shops across Europe and the US as well. If you want to get it first, popularfront.shop. You can pre-order it. It will arrive next month. If you want to follow us on socials, it's Instagram at popular.front, Twitter at popularfront_, TikTok at popular.front, and watch our documentaries at youtube.com/popularfront. For all our links to everything, go to www.popularfront.cc. You'll just see a list of everything there, all related to us, everything you can look at. Music in this episode, the intro was by Home, and the outro was by Sam Black. Listen to his music at samblackpf.com. Sponsors for this episode: Oracle Coffee Shop in Portland, Oregon, USA. They're an independent coffee business selling only fair trade products. See them at 3875 Southwest Bond Avenue, 97239. Grindcore House, a pair of independent coffee shops in Philadelphia, USA, one in South, one in West. Find them on socials at Grindcore House. We have a collaboration coffee out with them. It's called Flight Risk. It's really good. It's very strong. You can get that there. Go to Instagram.com/Grindcore House and follow the links. You'll see it. Final sponsor, Propagandopolis, an outlet selling and writing about historical conflict propaganda from around the world. You can buy prints at propagandopolis.com. Use a promo code POPULARFRONT10 for 10% off. Thank you to our high tier patrons. They're keeping all of this going. They are Peter Cherry, Lupe Calderon Garnica, Cyril Geist, Dali, Thomas Giuseppe, Viola Forvel, Christian Bustamante, Daniel Verdin, Margosha, Rohan Irvine, Ryan Barbadillo, VS, Brian R, Justin Katuna, Evan Pank, Bradley Hope, Wizard Actual, Benjamin Topper, Siddhartha O, Cameron Collins, Matthew Diffley, Claire, Liana, Robert, Sean, Christianovich, NTHG, Arturo Rafael Macias, Ethan Zvik, Kefir, Peter Nybrayton, Gabriel K, AG Barcelona, Elise Middlefar, David McManus, Tom Petrie, James Leons, Bradley Davies, No Dogs No Hamsters, Brendan Crave, B, Dallas Dunn, LD50 Seattle the Band, Adam H, Brambo, or B Rambo I guess, Larson 8669, Ivan Julien, Bjorn Kirsten, Diamond Steen, Michael O'Connor, Redacted, Nicholas Butter, JD, James Karpinski, Jav, James Cully, Ethan, Fitzmadrid, Ed Coulthard, D. San, Mike Barone, Liam Williams, DZA, Giorgio Arani, Vegan Straight Edge, Amy R, Rubicon, Frank Austin, Amelia Me, Michael Neck, Freya Northman, Neba, Noah, Andrew Hurley, Vida Provost, Bike Lane Bowser, Brian McLaughlin, Tom Lochrin, Young Wasabi, Tony Bin, JL, Stephen Davila, Chad Walker, Peter McCormack from What Bitcoin Did, Christopher Martin, Ryan Sandercock, and Maurice Zumbul. Thank you all so much. If you want to support us and get a lot of extra content, go to patreon.com/popularfront.